We are in Proverbs chapter 10. This is week 5 in Proverbs chapter 10, because Proverbs 10 begins the section of the book of Proverbs that is a collection of the Proverbs of Solomon. I mentioned to you a quote I found from one person who said, starting in Proverbs 10, reading Proverbs is like reading Bartlett's Book of Quotations, because it's just, individual Proverbs of Solomon. The advantage that you have in Bartlett's, though, is that it's already arranged topically. Solomon did not do that for us. He just threw them out there, and it's up to us to organize them. And that can be a challenge. And as we've been in chapter 10, we've discussed several different topics. We begin today probably a 2-week study on what Solomon says about our words or our speech. I have entitled this, Watch Your Mouth. I don't know if your parents ever told you that or not. Watch your mouth. Well, that's what Solomon is telling us in these verses. Watch your mouth. And I want us to look at the verses in Proverbs chapter 10, and then I have put in your notes the verses that we're going to be looking at. And I'm overwhelmed by the time I got through with this lesson. I will just let you know, next week, pack a lunch, because next week's sermon notes are 2 pages, front and back, in 11-point font, because there's that much that Solomon tells us about the mouth. But you all who have been here a while know you don't need to pack a lunch. Wilson is not going to miss lunch. It'll be okay. The reason there's so many notes is because I've printed out the verses for you, so that rather than flipping from chapter 10 to chapter 20 to chapter 18, you'll have them there in front of you. But let's look at Proverbs chapter 10, verse 11. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life, but the mouth of the wicked conceals violence. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Have you met people that the longer they talk, the more you felt like death, was coming on you, and negativity, and it was just sucking all the life right out of you, the longer you just wanted to get away from? Hopefully, you know at least one person that when they speak life. And when you leave, say, boy, I'm glad I had that conversation. That was an uplifting conversation. It was encouraging. It was strengthening. I learned something. That's a convicting verse. The mouth of the righteous is a fountain of life. Look at verse 18. Whoever conceals hatred with lying lips and spreads slander is a fool. Sin is not ended by multiplying words. The translation basically is, in the multitude of words, sin is not lacking. So the question we need to ask ourselves, how long can you talk before you start sinning? But the prudent hold their tongues. Now listen to this. The tongue of the righteous is choice silver, but the heart of the wicked is of little value. The lips of the righteous nourish many. There's that concept again. But fools die for lack of sense. We should be praying these verses, shouldn't we? Lord, let my lips nourish people. Let the things that I say bring nourishment to them. Look at verses 31 and 32. From the mouth of the righteous comes the fruit of wisdom, but a perverse tongue will be silenced. The lips of the righteous know what finds favor. In other words, what's appropriate. But the mouth of the wicked, only what is perverse. I pray that our words will bring wisdom to people. There are those people you just listen to and say, wow, I'm glad I listened to what they had to say. So if these verses were not convicting enough, we're using them as a launch pad to go into all of the world of Proverbs and look at what Solomon says about our speech, about our tongue. He gives us some more overarching principles, like chapter 13, verse 3. Those who guard their lips preserve their lives, but those who speak rashly will come to ruin. Now, when I heard that word, those who guard their lips, I thought, as you probably did, of David's prayer in Psalm 141, set a guard over my mouth, Lord. Keep watch over the door of my lips. I told you a few weeks ago about the lady I work with who said, Every morning I pray this prayer before I go to work. God, put your arms around me and put your hand over my mouth. And she needs to pray that prayer. I know her, but we all kind of need to pray that prayer, don't we? Lord, put your hand over my mouth. Set a guard over my mouth. Because he says in chapter 17, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent. What's that old saying? Better to be quiet and thought dumb than open your mouth and remove all doubt. Proverbs 18. We're going to sit here for just a minute because this verse is so misapplied so often in the church world today. Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. And you hear people say all the time, well, you just got to speak it. You just speak it and it'll happen. Just speak it and it'll happen. I am still not 6'4", 180 pounds. Sorry. I'm not. And nor do I drive a Bentley. Well, I don't speak that. But, you understand what I'm saying. People say, all you got to do is just say it. And I saw a TV person yesterday. I just speak it forth. Well, speak it forth, but the next 3 weeks they're still speaking it forth because it hasn't come in yet, He's not talking about speaking things. It's not, the old name it and claim it. It's not what he's talking about. Jesus explained what he was talking about in Matthew chapter 15. The things that proceed out of the mouth comes from the heart. And in Matthew chapter 12, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. A good man, out of the good treasure of his heart, brings forth good things. An evil person, out of the evil treasure of their heart, brings forth evil things. What you say is either life or death based on what's inside you. From the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. What he's speaking to us is this. Your mouth will express what's in your heart, whether it's life or whether it's death. So make sure that what's in your heart is right, so that what comes out of your mouth is right. And so we're going to start digging into what Solomon has to say about our words. And I have shared with you before, and I appreciate the fact that you're taking it seriously and praying for me, that these topical studies are very difficult for me. My brain and my training are take paragraphs from Paul and divide it up logically and all of that. It doesn't work with topical proverbs. And so I started putting together all the verses of the tongue and speech and words in Proverbs and quit. Because there's just too many of them. And I think that I did, with my other responsibilities, I do not have the hours and hours and hours it would take to try to look at each of these verses and put them in some kind of topical order. Surely somebody has done that. And I found some people who have. If you read after Chuck Swindoll, he's got several different organizational types about what Solomon says about the words. But the most thorough one I found is a website called Bible.org, and a retired minister, I think he's retired, who wrote it. His name is Bob Deffenbaugh. I don't know anything about him, but I know that he spent whatever time was necessary to come up with a topical organization of what Solomon teaches about the tongue. I'm not using his exact words most of the time, but I got to give him credit for helping me with the thought processes. Okay, these are the main hooks on which these verses go. We're going to look at the first two today. There are times when words are ineffective. Have you discovered that? There are times when it doesn't matter what you say, it makes no difference. You have had that experience yourself with people who have talked to you, and no matter how long they talk, what is the old saying? I was blue in the face, it didn't make any difference at all. There are times when words are ineffective. They are ineffective when they are spoken by a fool. Chapter 26, verse 7, like the useless legs of one who is lame is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. In other words, somebody who cannot use their legs can't use their legs. And a fool trying to say a proverb is just useless. You got to leave it to Gene Peterson and his Paraphrase the Message to kind of put things in the common vernacular. It's not a study Bible, but it's sure fun to read because it goes, oh, that's what it means. A proverb quoted by fools is limp as a wet noodle. That's what he's saying. And the same thing is true in chapter 26, verse 9, where he says, like a thorn bush in a drunkard's hand is a proverb in the mouth of a fool. And that is like, what? I don't understand what that means. So I dug into it a little bit, and it's talking about someone who is inebriated picking up like a thorn bush or something and just waving it around, trying to keep people off of them and doing more damage than good. Solomon says that's what it's like if a fool tries to speak a proverb. Both of these verses are saying this in essence. A person who speaks proverbs but is a fool, by their very life and actions, they take away all of the power of that proverb. And you know that's true. You know somebody at work that if they worked as hard doing their job as they did trying to not do their job, they would be one of the most productive people on the job. And then you hear them talk about how hard they work. And it's like, yeah, that's a proverb in the mouth of a fool. I know their life. It doesn't match up to what they're saying, and you just disregard what they say. That's what Solomon is saying. A word is ineffective when it's spoken by a fool. Second, words are ineffective when they are spoken to a fool. Proverbs 23 verse 9, do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your wisdom. Now, I said, wait a minute. Does that mean we're not supposed to be polite to them? Does that mean we're not ever supposed to say good morning to them? What does it mean? And you remember all the way through this, we've been talking about how important it is to study the words that were used. This word speak here means to put things in an arrangement. So he's talking about trying to instruct somebody. And I want to refer you, and I will a couple of times during these 2 weeks, to the sermon that's online from January 15th on how to recognize and relate to a mocker. We spent a whole lesson talking about all the things that Solomon says about mockers, scorners, scoffers. It's like a fool. It's a class of person. And I don't have the time to go into the description. That's why I refer you to the January 15th lesson. Just because I think it's one of the most important truths that we can learn. Probably all of us in this room have some pain in our lives that came as a result of not understanding what Solomon said on how to relate to a mocker. You know, you tried to correct somebody who was a mocker, you tried to help them, and it ended up blowing up in your face. Well, Solomon talks about how to handle those kind of people. And this is one of the things he says. Don't try to teach them, it's going to blow up in your face. And that's what he's saying here. Words are ineffective when they're spoken to a fool. And that's hard for us. This is a little part of what I said that week. Because we think if we would just talk to them, they could see the error of their ways. Because they haven't met me yet. And if they would just listen, you know, and then it doesn't work for us either. And then it's, oh man, I must know. Just, you got to realize there are different kinds of people. And Solomon says you relate to them differently. We would be far ahead in our lives if we understood that principle. So again, I just refer you to that, not because I taught it, but because it's important. Because each of us have some mockers in our life, and we need to know how to relate to them. Third, he says, words are ineffective when they're not accompanied by appropriate action. Chapter 14, verse 23, all hard work brings profit, mere talk leads only to poverty. Chapter 29, verse 19, servants cannot be corrected by mere words, though they understand they will not respond. He's talking there about a group of people who are just there because they're just trying to make their money and they don't really care about the project. So it's not enough to just say, oh, you need to work better. You got to show them. Words aren't enough. Words have to be matched with action. And if what you say is not matched by how you live, then what you say will be ineffective. You'll probably have heard that old saying, what you are speaks so loud they can't hear what you're saying. Because your actions are undermining your words. So words are ineffective when they are not accompanied by the appropriate action. I'm Exhibit A that talking about going to the gym is not enough. Sending them money every month isn't enough. You know? Apparently you got to do something more than that. Words without matching appropriate action are ineffective. Talking about praying isn't enough. Talking about reading the Bible isn't enough. And with some people, telling them what to do isn't enough. They have to be shown. And sometimes people need external motivation. You're going to do it this way or you're not going to have a job in the morning. But some people need to be shown, not just told, but shown. Fourth, words are ineffective when the timing is wrong. Apparently Solomon was not a morning person. And if you are not a morning person, I have a new life verse for you. Chapter 27, verse 14. If anyone loudly blesses their neighbor early in the morning, it will be taken as a curse. Hey, good morning. Oh, shut up. Words are ineffective when the timing is wrong. I love that verse. See, you didn't know some of this stuff was in the Bible, did you? If anyone loudly blesses their neighbor early in the morning, it'll be taken as a curse. The timing is so important to what we say. Chapter 25, verse 11, what a powerful verse. A word fitly spoken, it means at the right time and the right place, is like apples of gold in settings of silver. It's not just enough to know what to say. You have to know when to say it. And you have to know how to say it. Sometimes the message is right, but the timing's wrong. And you've probably had that. It is so aggravating as a preacher to preach something for years and years and years, and some guest speaker comes in and says the same thing, and people go, oh, that is so great. Wait, where have you been? Well, timing. There are things I wasn't ready to hear 20 years ago, right? There are probably things you weren't. Timing is so important. What to say, when to say it, how to say it. So there are times when words are ineffective. There are times, Solomon says, when silence is golden. In other words, there are times not to speak. Chapter 10, verse 19. Again, in the multitude of words, there is sin. Chapter 15, verse 28. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil. Chapter 17. The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint. Chapter 21, verse 23. Those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. Chapter 29, verse 20. Do you see someone who speaks in haste? There's more hope for a fool than for them. There are times when the right thing to do is to say nothing. Solomon tells us when. Silence lets you hear what the other person is trying to say. You ever been in one of those meetings where there's like 4 different conversations going on at the same time and nobody can hear anything? And finally somebody says, I'm sorry, I can only listen to one person at a time. Silence lets you hear what the other person is trying to say. Chapter 18, verse 13. To answer before listening, that's folly and shame. Years and years and years ago, I was meeting with a couple in preparation for their wedding ceremony. Each of them had been married previously. Each of them had their own homes where they had been living. And one of the topics that we broached was, where are you going to live? And they started talking. And he talked, and she talked, and then he talked louder, and then she talked louder, and then he talked louder, and then she talked louder. And I even though I was young, God just said, let him talk. And I just sat there and I listened. For 20 minutes. To where the conversation got to the point where, well, then maybe we shouldn't even get married. Well, then maybe we shouldn't. And I said, okay. And I said to him, what I hear you saying is this. Is that correct? He said, yes. And I said to her, now what I heard you saying was this. Is that correct? And she said, yes. And I said, now aren't both of those things the exact same thing? And they sat there for a minute and go, oh, yeah, I guess so. Neither of them had kept quiet long enough to really hear what the other person was saying. What they were both saying was, this house is meaningful to me, and we want to have our own place, but I need some time to sell this one first. They were both saying the same thing, but all they heard, was that one little thing, and silence, sometimes just saying, okay, I need to take a beat and make sure that I hear what you're saying. That in any kind of conflict you have, it's good to do that. It's good to stop and say, wait a minute, let me make sure that I understand that I heard you right. I have had these discussions with Donna. She's perfect. I have some trouble. But, where we'll be talking, and I say, okay, hang on just a second. I want to make sure that I understand what you're saying. What I heard you say was this. Is that right? And she looked at me and said, where have you been? No, that's not what I was saying. But if you don't stop and check it out, you end up having a big discussion about something that wasn't even really what the intent was. Silence lets you hear what the other person is trying to say. So wait a minute, is this what you're saying? I want to make sure that I understand that I'm responding to at least an accurate statement. Chapter 18, verse 15, the heart of the discerning acquires knowledge, for the ears of the wise seek it out. You've heard the old saying, God gave us 2 ears and 1 tongue, so we'd listen twice as much as we speak. Silence allows you to gain knowledge of what the other person is trying to say. He says in chapter 18, verse 17, in a lawsuit, the first to speak seems right until someone comes forward and cross-examines, right? I mean, you heard this side of the story, and oh yeah, that's got to be right. And then you heard the other side of the story, and oh, wait a minute, maybe. So what I put down there is listen to learn. Lord, let me listen to learn what's really being said here, so that I have the right thing to say at the right time in the right way. Silence allows you to hear what the other person's trying to say. Silence allows any anger or strong emotion to fade away. Chapter 15, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stores up anger. The tongue of the wise sows knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly. Chapter 17, the one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, but whoever has understanding is even-tempered. Silence allows that anger and that intensity to kind of dissipate, so that you deal with the facts rather than the emotions. You ever heard somebody say, well, I was mad when I said that, so I really didn't mean it? I don't think that's right. I think when somebody gets mad, that they're saying what they really think. And just their filters are gone, and their defenses are down, and they don't care. And so they're just saying what they really feel like. And whether you agree with that statement or not, you think back over your life, you'll probably say, yeah, when I was really mad, I really meant it. I pretended I didn't, but that's really what I wanted to say. So sometimes, the best thing to do in a conversation is to say, we need to catch our breath, and we need to take a minute, and we need to go to separate rooms of the house, and we need to watch a TV show or read a book or do something for a while and get some silence so this intensity can fade, so that we can come back to dealing with the issue that needs to be dealt with rather than the emotions before we say something that we're going to regret saying. Silence gives you time for that anger to fade. But I want to do it when I'm mad. Right, yeah, I know, because then I could really tell them. No. If your purpose is to really tell them, okay. If your purpose is to make the relationship work, catch your breath. Silence gives that time for that anger to fade away. And silence gives you the time to consider what to say and how to say it. We said this a couple of minutes ago, that words are ineffective when the timing's wrong. And so silence gives you a chance to consider and to pray. There are a lot of times when somebody's talking and I'm praying, Lord, please, you got to give me some help here. I need to know how to react to this. I need to know the words to say. And I often pray, and I hope you will, Lord, help me to know what to say and how to say it. Because sometimes you say the right thing and you don't say it in the right way and it doesn't get received. Says, Lord, help me to say the right thing and help me to say it in the right way. Silence gives you time to consider and to pray about what to say and how to say it. Chapter 15, verse 28. The heart of the righteous weighs its answers. The mouth of the wicked gushes evil. It's good to be still sometimes. Say, Lord, what's your response to this? How do I need to say this? Well, I get to this point in my study, and I had a whole other section I was going to add to today. I said, ain't no way I got time for all that. So that's the first part of next week, as we continue what Proverbs says in the book of Solomon about our words and how to watch our mouth. And we're going to talk next week about some words that Solomon expressly says don't use, ways not to speak. And then we're going to talk about times when words can give life. And there are several passages throughout Proverbs where it talks about if you do it this way, you're giving life. You're giving encouragement. And so rather, it's what Paul says in his writings in the New Testament, where the King James says, let no corrupt communication proceed out of your mouth, but only what's good to the use of edifying. And when you take those words together, he's really doing a play on words. And he literally is saying, don't let your words tear people down. Let them build people up. And that's a choice we make. Don't let your words tear people down. Let them build people up. So at this point, I was just overwhelmed. I said, okay, Lord, that's enough for today. We'll pick it up next week. And I felt that our closing prayer should be the words of David. Did I put it down there at the bottom of your notes? Would you read that prayer with me, please, from Psalm 19? Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. And may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine on you and give you his peace now and evermore. Amen. God bless you. Thanks for coming out today. You're dismissed.